Well, as you may know, I think for this podcast, maybe a disclaimer is not necessarily, but since we will be talking about brands, name, and all that kind of stuff, I think it is necessary that everybody already has to know by this point that whatever is said here is my sole responsibility, and it comes only from my mind, nothing to do with nothing around me. So I want to prepare you for this intro in particular because I want to do it. I love doing intros, and it's been almost 10 years now, practically 11 years since Game of Thrones debuted. And we have taken a great portion of this this resurgence of this podcast dedicated to it. Why? Well, I think I have explained it so many times. We are now at the verge of the very end. By the time you are hearing this, it's about less than 20 hours before the final episode of Game of Thrones is transmitted, or it goes on the air, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to do two things. We're going to capture on the nostalgia, the whole thing, and messes that are going around. And we're going to be also talking about the OnePlus 7 Pro, which came out recently. And there's a lot of stuff, so this promises to be an epic Macedon podcast. So thank you for bearing with me, and welcome officially to the Macedon podcast. Welcome. Well, as you know, we have been, for the people who are listening to this, because I have to be considerate on the fact that not everybody is a Game of Thrones fan, not everybody has seen the show, and that is really important because throughout these 5 episodes, we have been on a roller coaster in which we cannot be shoving the show throughout people's throats, but bragging about that you don't watch Game of Thrones does not make you a better person. But besides that, I want to recap. But from the perspective from a fan, what has been these 11 years? We're gonna be completely honest about this. The series started with a little bit. It started with a little bit of I will say it wasn't the fastest pacing to be such an epic masterpiece touching on the fantasy genre. So let's say about between season 2 and season 3, the events started building up and creating this buzz. So I would say it is around season 3 that everybody was like getting on board, like running literally to get onto the Game of Thrones bandwagon. For 11 years, we have bited our nails. Not only bited our nails, we have breathed heavily. We have lost our breath. We have followed this series, and we have made kind of a personal connection to most of the characters, even with the villains. We have gone through a trip that we have made this adventure our own. And before Game of Thrones, the closest thing that we had to an experience in entertainment like this, I think it should have been the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Even though they're new Star Wars movies and we got the whole MCU going on, but the MCU, it's the MCU. For example, in the MCU, you have New York, you have Germany, you have Cleveland, as it was stated on Captain America Civil War. You have cities. It is like adapting fantasy stories over the real world, and it blurs a line between science fiction and fantasy. But Game of Thrones is straight fantasy, taken to another level that we have grown with these characters. So I've been one that have been really critical of this whole movement and getting signatures so that the showrunners made another ending and they rewrite the whole final season. I have heard from people talking directly to me that they feel kind of disappointed on how things are turning up to be. And me, and now I'm citing away all the everything that has been going around. This is my personal opinion on this. First, I think in the beginning the pacing started a little bit slow, but we have come from a really adrenaline-filled 7th season. So when we switch to the 8th season, we need to a little bit of, even though it has been 2 years, we came with the expectancy of watching on that first episode a little bit of blood, and we didn't got quite of that until I think it was the 3rd episode, because the first 2 episodes focus mainly on character development and character placement on the specific situation that they are in that moment. So when we get to the 3rd episode, all hell's break loose. This is a moment that we have been waiting for 11 years. For more than a decade, we have been waiting for this moment. And I would say mostly 10 years because the gap, I think it was between the 7th and the 8th season. But nonetheless, I think the 3rd episode, it's to me when season 8 really started. And from that point until the point that we are, before that big finale, before that, before everything that we're expecting to see in that finale versus what we're gonna get, I'm pretty much satisfied. I think I could say it is a heel turn for, mad heel turn for Dany, the Mother of Dragons. I think it was one of the most marvelous things to do on a plot twist. It's something that is not easy to do, and it pisses me off to see this whole movement. I think it's over 20,000 people strong that they want to rewrite that, and it sickens me because I'm from Puerto Rico, so right here in Puerto Rico we got a lot of people who are way too fanatical about certain political candidates. And that's what I see with this movement. In particular, I want to be a little bit specific. In Puerto Rico, there's this attorney, this woman called Alexandra Lugar. She was she was the first woman to assume to become a candidate for the governorship of Puerto Rico in 2016, and she built a really strong following, about over 100,000 people, and immediately they became fanatical. And I want to be really exclusive because this is the messed up power of Game of Thrones. The series had a lot of political placement, political place in place. So that's why I'm making this comparison. The thing is that her followers became really, and I'm not criticizing. Criticizing Alessandra Lugaro. It's just her fans. They are hardcore. She cannot do nothing wrong. She's perfect. She's the only answer. And what is happening with Dany right now in Game of Thrones, and this whole backlash that has been going on, especially after the episode 5 of season 8, properly named The Bells, is the same thing. It's like Dany cannot do wrong, but she has been doing wrong maybe not on purpose, but she has been doing on wrong. She has been killing people. Oh, but she has been saving her life. Okay, Arya can set a really good example of what is killing a person, of saving your life and killing a person because you want to kill a person. In the case of Daenerys, she is stating that she wants to kill people. So when she says that she's going to kill people, not when she says that she's going to kill people, but when she actually does. Wait a minute. Okay, don't worry. Well, I'm sorry for that interruption. It's just that we get some notifications when we're recording, and as I've told you before, we don't edit this. We make actually a one shot. This is what is called a one shot podcast. If it goes wrong, we record the thing all over again. So that's why we have this kind of small bumps. We hope with time they will fade away. So I apologize for that. So going back where we were, in the case of Game of Thrones, I was speaking about Lugaro fans in Puerto Rico, and it's the same thing is happening with her. And I think I'm speaking with the people who are pissed of Daenerys turning heel. And it's the fact that it's something that was building up to happen. Let's go, for example, with DC's The Killing Joke right in the 80s, you know. That's the point of that. All you need is a push. When you have power, all you need is a push. And it all goes to hell. Let's say, for example, and I'm doing this example trying to be with the most respect. Let's say, for example, Venezuela. When Hugo Chavez started, he had amazing proposals. And you can look it up and Google it. The guy had amazing proposals for economic development, for equally economic development throughout all of Venezuela. But if you see a timeline, if you build a timeline of things that happened in Venezuela, he was doing great. Since the moment he was elected, he had his backlash. And then, between 2001 and 2002, a coup took place in Venezuela. I always have personally thought that it was a coup that was staged by the very same Venezuelan military, so they could get more control of the government. And I have always seen that coup as it was kind of an inside job, because when you see and you followed Hugo Chavez's record, it is from that time on that things starting to go apeshit. It is from that moment on, and that's what happened with Daenerys, and that could happen with anyone. The lesson with Daenerys Targaryen is that you cannot be blindly fanatical about anything in life. About anything, you cannot be fanatical about anything in life. You have to always have an objective view of things, and I think that's what has been happening there, and it has been really, really hard for these fans. They're making a movement. They're getting lawyers. They have a change.org petition and everything, and it is because this fanatical state. And I know even actress Emilia Clarke did not like the way things turn out in the end, but it was the logical conclusion. She has had many powers, and Cersei Lannister is this person who can bring you to that very dark place. If you see the Game of Thrones, and it's really interesting, Cersei Lannister is like a backward Batman. You know that throughout the history of Batman, he has been blamed for creating his own gallery of rogues. And the thing with Cersei is that she has built her own gallery of rogues, like completely, starting with the persecution of the Stark family. Besides that, the way she has been behaving to all of the Seven Kingdoms, and she has built her enemies, you know, and And the funny thing is that between her and Daenerys, there's no like an actual friction, just that